Time up. Deep right field. Down the line it goes. Castellanos is out of room. It's out of runner goes. 3-2 pitch hit down the line. Is it fair? It is a fair ball. Into the corner. Off and running. Chu. Yu Chang around third. He's going to score easily. And into second. Hit hard. Hit deep. Up and out. Goes Amed Rosario. And there's a fly ball. Left field. It's deep. It's up. It's gone to the porch. Hit pretty well. Deep left center field. It is gone to Souvenir City.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Guardians of the CLE podcast. I'm your host, Max Goldstein, joined as always by my co-host, Mel Kirby. Last week, we were just, previewing what's going on with the MLB lockout, and that's still currently going on. Disappointment for all of us. So we thought that we would, spice things up a little bit with the podcast. We went through our position previews for the upcoming season. We went through all the information we can give to you guys on the MLB lockout. So we're going to track it back a little bit with blasts from the past. We're going to give a general overview of our favorite seasons, for the organization here in Cleveland. But before we get into that, we do have to just give you guys a brief update on the MLB lockout. So I'm going to pass it off to Mel to give everyone that update.
Yeah, thank you, Max. I know we're all getting exhausted talking about this lockout. I think in the press, just the back and forth blame game, makes it even more exhausting. But, as we mentioned on our lockout roundtable episode with Quincy Wheeler last week, and if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that episode after you listen to this one. I think it was a great breakdown we did on, the current state of the lockout. And as we pointed out last week, we kind of mentioned that there's really no penalties on these local TV deals until more than 25 games are missed. So that's making people think there's really not going to be a sense of urgency negotiating to get any games before May 1st. We mentioned the owners don't really seem interested in playing in April just due to the cold weather cities, the fan turnout, things of that nature. But the players, they're still trying to submit offers. But it's the cycle we're in. The players are submitting offers. The owners are saying they're moving backwards. The owners submit a counter proposal with barely any movement. Wash, rinse, repeat. But the Players Association did submit an official proposal on Sunday. Once again, owners were disappointed. They say they're deadlocked at this point, but the Players Association vehemently denies this. So once again, lack of communication. They're not on the same page. They're blaming each other. But just the specifics of that deal for anybody who still cares about the specifics at this point. The players came down $5 million on the pre-arb bonus pool, so they now request $80 million. And remember, they were up over $100 million for most of the winter here. And it would also grant Major League Baseball the ability to implement 3 specific on-field rule changes with a 45-day notice, but that wouldn't start until the 2023 season. So that's the pitch clock, the larger bases, and the shift restrictions. There was no change on CBT or minimum salary. And there were just some more minor revenue sharing changes also on the table for the players. And this was all per Evan Drelich on Twitter. But, just my final thoughts on this lockout piece. The fans don't care about any of these specifics or these rule changes. So the way I see it, and I tweeted this last night, it's like baseball is doing a phenomenal job, not only losing the common fan with the lockout in general, but they're also losing they're pissing the diehard fans off with these rule changes. Diehard fans like baseball the way it is. Okay, they're going to shift on you, hit the ball the other way. You get paid all this money, figure it out. You're not going to get sympathy from fans, especially when everybody's already irritated that there's no baseball and it's March and we should be excited about spring training games. And, Max, you and I should be coming on here talking about what prospects are jumping ahead of the others. We should be talking about this second base battle. And instead we're talking about larger bases and how it could, limit injuries, and owners don't want to pay for the replacement players when people go on the injured list. Like, I think it's just tired at this point. And, I was hopeful for baseball May 1st, with the owners feeling the pressure of losing out on TV revenue. But, for that to happen, a deal would need to get done in the next 2-3 weeks, by the end of March, to have that month of spring training they keep talking about. And honestly, at this point, it doesn't sound like either side's really interested in negotiating with the other much, even with, the smaller room. So, final piece on that, an interesting little report came out once both sides left Jupiter, that 4 of the owners holding up a deal due to not wanting to increase the CBT threshold were the Tigers, the Reds, the Angels, and the Diamondbacks. And I mean, I saw a lot of people surprised that the Dolans weren't one of these owners. And I don't see any scenario where it would benefit the Dolans to be in a lockout for so many different reasons. The first being they're in the middle of a rebrand. They're trying to market the Guardians. They can't release any jersey, on-field jerseys with players' names on them. And their roster is nowhere near set. So I'm sure Chris Antonetti and company's not happy about this. And they also want to finish the deal with David Blitzer. They want some more money on board. And, that can't happen when we're in a lockout. No owners are going to want to bring another party to the table at this point. But, the Dolans are nearing the end here. They want to sell within the next 5 years. They want to get that train going. So, I'm sure they're pounding the table, wanting a deal to get done, because this does nothing but hurt them at that point. What do you think about that little report that came out, Max?
Yeah, I mean, you brought up a lot of great points. It was surprising, seeing some of these names on here: the Tigers, the Reds, Angels, and Diamondbacks. And I know that you were just mentioning that people were surprised when the Dolans weren't, one of the owners causing the delay. And just to go off of what you were saying, they're trying to get this season underway here. They have a total rebrand coming up. You just mentioned how they're trying to sell the team within the next 5 years. They're not trying to stand in anybody's way, right? They've made their money. They've cut their losses throughout their ownership of this franchise over the years. So these petty little nonsense back and forth, this isn't going to affect them in the long run, especially within the next 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons, right? That they're not going to get affected. So I'm glad to not see them on that list. But I'm not necessarily surprised as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, obviously to just go off the point that we've been, referencing towards on the lockout. It's just disappointing, for everybody involved, that we still haven't figured this out yet. And just to see that, April might get cut out of the slot for, one of the months that we're going to be playing baseball. It's disappointing just to think about that now, but they might be leaning this route for years in the future as well. So that's just 1 month less of baseball. Well, whether the players would like that or not, we'll find out a bunch of information after the lockout ends. But they're gonna. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an ESPN 30 for 30 in the next decade or so, highlighting what's been going on here. But enough about the lockout talk. As I said at the beginning of this podcast, we're all just kind of done with it. We had to give you the guys that general overview just to do our due diligence and do our jobs on the podcast. But it is disappointing. That's the bottom line. But we want to bring some smiles to our listeners, to our viewers this week. So we really wanted to get creative and think about something else to talk about on the podcast with all you guys. So Mel and I decided we're going to be doing some blasts from the past. But before we get into that, just wanted to give everybody some player updates from players of the Guardians here. Zach Plesac on Instagram showed us that some of the guys on the 40-man roster are holding their own this spring training in Arizona. So everybody's, getting revved up and ready for the season. Zach Plesac, Shane Bieber, and Jose Ramirez were pictured on the post. Miles Straw posted a picture in a Cleveland baseball uniform with the words in quotation soon. So, he's very much looking forward for the season to begin. Brian Rocchio is posting videos from last season in AA with Akron, within his caption were the hourglass emojis. So message remains the same for everybody. They're all just getting ready for the season, waiting to get back to action. Bombi Bradley posted a video from last season saying that he needs it back. Yu Chang is posting or is back home taking batting practice with the sounds of roosters mid video. So I mean he's like
crazy times.
It's a wake up call, as some might say. The theme for these guys, like I was saying, is just they want baseball back. As fans, we want it back. As the players, they want it back. And if only the owners wanted it back as well. But without further ado, we're going to get into this blast from the past here and just give you guys a general overview of some of our favorite seasons and memories from the Cleveland Indians, who, obviously now are the Cleveland Guardians. But Mel, you listed here first that 2016 season for obvious reasons. It was a very memorable one. One that, I'm never going to forget, and I'm sure that goes for most Cleveland fans. But, what stood out to you the most from that season and made you, want to highlight it for this podcast?
I think part of it is just the fact that they weren't expected to do much of anything heading into the season. And they had that 14-game winning streak over the summer, early summer, June into July. But also, this was kind of the start of our starting rotation, like really coming into their own with these young guys. This was Trevor Bauer's coming out party. He entered the rotation from the bullpen after a Carlos Carrasco injury early in the season. And also, we talk about how slick Chris Antonetti is. And, the Dolans gave him their blessing to go all in this year. And, remember they acquired Andrew Miller at the deadline that year. And I think this moment really got the fans excited. Like, whoa, the Dolans are spending money. We're all in this year. Like, let's buy into this. Progressive Field was rocking. The season got more intense and more exciting as it went on. I'll always remember that August series against the Toronto Blue Jays. Tyler Naquin hit that walk-off home run, inside the park home run in that series. And they were all one-run games. And, little did we know that was going to be the preview of the ALCS. But this team was so clutch. You know what I mean? Like, this was a team like with that starting rotation and then beefing up the bullpen at the deadline. And obviously the offense that they had, you never counted them out of any game. And, as the season continued, I wasn't surprised that, they ended in the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, just from start to finish, that year was really special. Mid-season, that was right around when the Cavs had won the championship over the Warriors, and the city was bumping.
Rocking.
I mean, there was just so much energy surrounding all of our beloved teams. That includes the Browns as well. But one of my favorite parts of that season was just watching how everything came together. You had quality outings. It seemed like almost every week from guys like Corey Kluber. Francisco Lindor had a career year that year as well, and he was also highlighted as an all-star. But that acquisition of Andrew Miller, I remember when it happened, and I was living in New York at the time, so I had many people come to me being saying that we stole him, and this was just about to be this was our chance to really solidify ourselves as postseason threats, and it ended up taking us all the way to the World Series that year. So start to finish, it was an unbelievable year. Trevor Bauer that year also solidified himself as a major league starter, especially after Carrasco's injury that year. But
how about the bloody finger game against Toronto?
Man. Yeah, no, something I'll never forget. It always just makes me think that, man, if he had not just had his hobby, right? You can't, a lot of people like to rip on me just from that, because I'm from Cleveland. But on top of that, they know Trevor Bauer was messing around with drones and he accidentally cut himself during our postseason run on his, what was it? His right ring finger.
I believe so.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I just remember them coming at me being like, how could he be so stupid, this and that? But you can't really, knock on the guy. Everybody has their hobbies. And this is something that he'd been doing for years without necessarily hurting himself to that extent. So, what happened differently on that day than what he was doing before? Maybe he's trying something else, but at the end of the day, I can't really knock him for it, but it just makes me think, like, had Corey Kluber not had to go out for 3 starts in the World Series, I think we had that locked up.
And what gets lost in that Trevor Bauer game is Ryan Merritt literally came out of nowhere and he pitched a gem. Because that whole Toronto series, the offense struggled. Like our offense was rock solid all year. And then they hit, I think, 168 during that series. And, due to that pitching, that rotation, and the depth, like none of us knew who Ryan Merritt was, but he was
Right.
there, he was ready to go, and he stepped right in. And that just gave him so much momentum, heading into probably one of the best World Series matchups I have seen. And not just because the Cubs were always my second favorite team, simply because they were always on WGN when I was growing up. So if
Right.
the Indians weren't on when I was a kid, I was turning on WGN and I was watching the Cubs. And they had the 2 longest World Series droughts at the time. So I think even for the whole country, it was like an underdog matchup. It wasn't those usual teams that you see in there, which I think just gave the whole series, a different type of feel to it.
Yeah, it was awesome watching 2 teams who hadn't had that much postseason success in any relative, past, right? It hadn't been anytime soon. So just watching them go at it, it was so fun. And I remember, you touched on Ryan Merritt. I forgot who said it, whose statement it was on the Blue Jays, but they said that he was going to be shaken in his boots. And, that's basically what he had their whole roster doing the following day. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
to be up
phenomenal outing.
3-1. To be up 3-1.
Yeah, yeah. And we all remember Rajai Davis's home run and just the emotions flying through all of us at that time. I to be honest, I didn't have a reaction to it. It happened so fast. It was kind of those things where you're frozen, right?
I think the fact it happened off Aroldis Chapman too. Like I remember, I'm like, oh, we're screwed. They're bringing him in an inning early.
Right.
This is over. And then that Brandon Geyer double, and then here comes Rajai Davis, and oh my gosh, it was the
Oh,
He was only hitting 132 that
I
whole
know.
postseason, and then bam.
I know. And Andre Knott had a little piece on that as well. He said that he was speaking to Rajai Davis earlier in the week, and he was asking him specifically about Chapman and how to have success off of him. And he said, well, for a hitter like me, I only really have one chance. And that's if he throws a fastball low and in on that inside corner, something I can turn around on and do some damage with. And that's exactly what happened, right? It was down and in. He took his shot and, it just ended up going right over the wall. But man, at the end of it, I remember, what was it, Michael Martinez's ground out to Chris Bryant to end the series. I kind of just I was sad and I was devastated, right? But I really more walked away from that experience saying hey, at least we were a part of it, because that was one of the best 7-game World Series of all time.
Well, and I think 2017 was the year we were expected to make some more noise. We were expected to come back and be even better than we were in 16. But as we know, we ended up getting swept out of the playoffs in 2017. So, we went through some down years after that, but always remained semi-competitive. That's one thing about this organization. They try to stay right in the middle of it.
Right. Yeah. And then, yeah, I just remember thinking how awesome is it to be a fan of something like that, right? It wasn't like we just lost the World Series. We lost the World Series in one of the top 3 World Series of all time, right? If you weigh the matter of the 2 teams who were facing off against each other, and then how it swung. It was a 3-1 comeback, just to the theatrics of the to start that game, Game 7. I think it was was it Dexter Fowler who went deep off of Corey Kluber just to start, and then Rajai Davis in the bottom of the 8th to Jason Kipnis's foul ball. It's kind of like, man, I was just drained. I was kind of just thankful at the end of it. Although
And the rain delay, it's like the dramatics in Game 7. There was even that rain delay before the start of the 10th inning. It had everything. It had everything in that series.
Had everything you could have asked for. But hopefully we'll be back within these next couple of seasons, and we live for October in Cleveland. We all know that. But another season that both of us highlighted here was the 2007 campaign, where we finished 96 and 66. We were AL Central champs. This was the 2007 season where we unfortunately blew a 3-1 series lead yet again to the Boston Red Sox, who then won the World Series 4-0 against the Colorado Rockies. So another disappointing season, but one filled with so many memories. What was your favorite part?
Eric Wedge really did a great job as manager that year, bringing that team together. But Grady Sizemore was out of this world in 2007. And then you had Victor Martinez in the middle of that lineup. Sabathia won the Cy Young that year. So probably those 3 guys and just the success that they had. But, I don't know how many people remember this, but the start of that season actually had to be moved to Milwaukee due to really bad snowy conditions in Cleveland at the time. So that's interesting because I can think of many opening days since then that it's been snowing in Cleveland, but it was a little too bad to play baseball in that year. So that's how they started out the year. But again, just the bounce back that team showed. They finished 78 and 84 in 2006. That was 4th in the AL Central. And it usually takes teams 2 or 3 years, to get back to that point of almost reaching a World Series. And, I know there's no participation trophies and all that, but, just to show they came right back and won 96 games the next season. And we were that close. But I think that whole Boston series changed when they got blown out 20-1. I think Game 4. They were demoralized after that. That's when the series really ended.
Yeah, I remember it. It was tough. I remember going up 3-1 and then having to go to Boston and try to fight it out, but kind of just all fell apart. No games were really close after that, and it was just really disappointing. But if I'm not mistaken, did CC Sabathia, Fausto Carmona, and Cliff Lee all finish with at least 18 wins that year?
I believe so. I could fact check it real quick, but those 3, Fausto Carmona or whoever he is, as we later found out.
Yeah. I mean, but just the fact that we had 3 pitchers who were all trying to beat each other out for the AL Cy Young Award. It was just, man, and I brought it up in prior episodes. This team really focuses on pitching. It's not about who's going to blast the ball out of the park. It's how many quality starts are you going to get out of these guys every single year, because that's what's going to bring you the most success.
So that year, CC Sabathia was 19 and 7. Fausto Carmona was, Roberto Hernandez, as he's now known, was 19 and 8. And then Paul Bird was 15 and 8.
Wow.
Then we had Jake Westbrook 6 and 9, Cliff Lee 5 and 8, and then good old friend Jeremy Sowers was 1 and 6.
Wow. So maybe it was Cliff Lee. Maybe it was his 08 year that he had 19, because I know that he also won a Cy Young in his time. So, but man,
that's when we had Rafi Perez, the dominant lefty out of the pen that year too, setting up for Joe Borowski as the closer. That team had some pretty good pitching too. And Jensen Lewis, now on Bally Sports Ohio, he was in the bullpen that year as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's always fun, like looking back on these days. I remember their signature uniform that year was the sleeveless look.
I like those uniforms.
Right, with the script Indians across, and oh man, Travis Hafner.
Kronk, yep.
Yeah, that's the first person I think of. 2 players when I see that uniform. It's Travis Hafner and Grady Sizemore. right?
Yeah.
And that's it.
Grady Sizemore flying around center field.
Oh, that was so awesome. I think this was the year too, 2007, where I think Travis Hafner had a 3 home run game in Minnesota while they were still indoors. That was also a
The
highlight.
Metrodome.
Oh yeah.
That's a blast from the past in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. We could do a whole show on Travis Hafner. What a legend.
Oh yeah. One of the
What a
best.
legend. Yeah, but same sort of scenario. It was a disappointing end to it, but definitely one that we can look back on and have
It's
some
going to be a
good
theme here.
Right. Yeah, it's just
Unfortunately, we all know the history. It's been a
guys, we're
while.
from Cleveland. It's just how it goes here. But you just mentioned it. Why don't you lead us into our final segment?
Yeah, so we're going to end here with talking about the 1997 Cleveland Indians. And this, I will say, yeah, I was too young to remember the 1995 Indians, but my parents always told me that 97 that 95 was their year to win it. But when I was watching this 1997 World Series with my parents, I just remember them jumping up and down, smacking the wall, knocking drinks over, like just the emotion, the ups and the downs that they went through being Cleveland Indians fans. And watching this 1997 team made me realize, like, oh my God, like I got Cleveland sports fandom, especially baseball, running through my blood here, which is probably why I'll always be a diehard baseball fan. Like I have 1997 to thank for that. And, they lost Albert Bell and Kenny Lofton, prior to this season after, they obviously made the World Series run in 95 against the Braves, but it's the young starting pitching in 97. It's Jarrett Wright. He's the face of 1997 for me. I have an older sister and she was obsessed with Jarrett Wright when she was younger. She was in high school at the time. And Bartolo Colon was also a rookie that year. So they kind of burst on the scenes. And Tony Fernandez signed as a free agent and he made a huge impact in the postseason we'll get to in a minute. But those new acquisitions mixed with the young starting pitching fueled an unlikely World Series run. And I know I saw an article where they interviewed Mike Hargrove about this season, and he even made a point to say things just didn't really come easy for the team this season. 95, they were just really, really good. But 97, they had they needed a lot of pieces to come together here, like this young starting pitching. But the postseason was incredible. Jarrett Wright outdueled Andy Pettitte twice. Sandy Alomar hit that famous home run off Mariano Rivera to beat the Yankees in the ALDS. And then, Tony Fernandez, I mentioned him. He was an acquisition prior to the year, and he won the ALCS against the Orioles with a Game 6 game-winning home run. But they put up a battle, against the Florida Marlins in the World Series. But, our rock solid Jose Mesa just had to give up that single to Edgar Renteria. It's probably going to be, just permanently stained in the minds of Cleveland baseball fans forever. And there are probably people throwing their arms up in the air listening to this right now, being reminded of this. But yeah, I'll never forget like the emotion my parents showed when this happened. But Cleveland also hosted the All-Star game that year, and Sandy Alomar was the MVP, much like Shane Bieber was the MVP when we recently hosted the All-Star game.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows it. We all see those orange seats in the background. Obviously it's definitely not a full stadium because it's Florida, right?
Yeah.
But oh man, I mean, look, I was born in 97, so I was only a couple months old when we had lost. But obviously, when you're as dedicated as a fan, to your teams as I am, I had to, watch the series in full, and I have a couple of times. But just thinking back, maybe a different pitch selection. If I'm not mistaken, he had the count in his favor during that time. So, man, just right over his glove into center field. Everybody knows, the guy didn't even run across the plate. He jumped on it. It was horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
The
I can't
expansion
imagine.
Florida Marlins.
Right. I couldn't even. Oh man. Listen, we lost in extra innings in World Series Game 7, and I thought that was gut-wrenching. But to lose on a walk-off in Game 7, that has to be a completely different animal.
Yeah. That broke the fans for a while there. That was brutal.
That was at the peak of 90s baseball, right? Arguably, yep. Right? It was towards the end of the 90s, but
prime right there.
I think as an organization from 94 through 99 or 98, we had consecutive, sellout seasons, right? Every single
455,
right? Right. Every single game was a sellout. And that is, if you guys have been to Progressive Field in the last couple of years, I've been fortunate enough to go for primetime games where, it's 90% capacity or maybe slightly under that, right? I've never been to an opening day before, but think about looking all over the stadium, every single seat. And what do we hold at Progressive? Like 38,000, maybe 40?
Yeah, probably like 40, 42 maybe.
Yeah, so just looking around and seeing every seat full, that was probably a dream season. Another unfortunate end. It seems to be a trend for the Indians, the Guardians, but
let's hope that changes as we flip to the Guardians.
We hope it changes. But yeah, I mean that basically wraps up our episode tonight. For all the listeners, we really appreciate you guys tuning in every week. I know things are slow right now with the MLB lockout. That's why Mel and I had to get creative. So we're going to be bringing you guys some more stuff throughout the weeks. But as always, I hope everybody enjoyed. We can't forget to mention, rate, review, subscribe to us on all the major platforms. We also air on YouTube as well for a video edition of the podcast. But yeah, give a follow to Believeland Media on Twitter. Go to www.believelandmediallc.com for sponsorship packages. Our ratings go up every single week. Our viewers go up. Our articles, we keep pounding out content for everybody. And, we're obviously seeing a great trend in that. But like I was saying, just wanted to thank everybody for joining us tonight. And we're very much looking forward to bringing you more content next week. But I'll pass it off to Mel to cap this episode off.
Yeah, thanks, Max. This trip down memory lane just makes me realize how much I love the game as baseball, no matter the, stupid things both sides are doing here. I'm definitely going to be one of those fans who's waiting for it to come back. I know Cleveland as a whole, we love our baseball team, as we mentioned, with those 455 consecutive sellouts. And, I just can't wait to see, what lifelong memories the Guardians are going to bring us once we finally get baseball back. We continue to cherish those memories that we made watching the Cleveland Indians. And, after all, it's the Cleveland on the front of the jersey that matters the most, not the, whatever the team name is. But, yeah, I want to thank everybody for listening this week. And once again, if you're listening, shoot Max or I or the podcast page a comment on Twitter, drop some ideas what you'd like us to cover. Any questions you may have, anything, feel free. This is all of our podcast here. We love bringing you guys content, while baseball is locked out right now. So as Max mentioned, rate, review, subscribe on YouTube and all major podcast platforms. We really appreciate the support. And until next week, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you Monday.